Before we do start, if we could please just afford our guest a very warm round of applause. Mr. Mark Dowds. As you can see by the slide that's in the background behind Mark, very, very human topic, probably completely different from what we've spoke about already this morning with regards to tech and AI and really delving into the human spirit. Mark, I suppose my first question to you is, we only really met last month, or certainly quite recently. We went for breakfast and had an incredible conversation. We then met again last week and had dinner with The Edge from U2. So my first question is, when are we going for lunch?
And with who?
No, it's a privilege to have you here. I've had an insight into your diary this week, next week. You've travelled up from Fermanagh, from Enniskillen this morning to be here. Thank you. You kind of look at your career bio, and there's a lot of big names, big roles, and the one that really stuck out, I mean, it's probably the only aspect I have something in common from the career bio, is you were kicked out of school at 16.
15.
So give us a snapshot of how a 15-year-old gets kicked out of school in the centre of Belfast and goes on to have an impact on a global stage.
So I was smart enough when I was 11 to pass the 11 plus and get into Inst, but then I was creative enough to get myself expelled. But when I was 15, my pranks were just epic. Like the principal absolutely hated me. I was a good kid, but I was just way too creative, and I was bored out of my skull in school. I was way more interested in business than books, and when I got kicked out of school, I was very thankful my dad had a business. My dad had a gun shop in Belfast. It was really great in the 70s and 80s. This is not made up. My dad had other businesses, but that was one of the ones, and he had it in just on Chichester Street. And so I used to walk up from school every day. So that day that I walked out, I just remember turning my back on school, basically giving it the fingers and walking straight into work. So I saw a lot when I was in that environment. So when I was a kid, I remember Ian Paisley coming in to my dad and saying to my dad, "John, I'm starting the third force. Will you supply me guns?" So I had exposure to a whole bunch of stuff when I was young, to sort of really put me off religion, put me off, sort of lighten me up really around peace, reconciliation, all that sort of stuff. So I ended up working with my dad until I was 20, I think it was 22. I'd actually done really well. My dad also had a pet foods business, and so I ended up expanding that, did well. I was supposed to take it all over, but then I had a little bit of a crisis because I'd made money. I sort of reached the pinnacle of my goals when I was 21. My goals were to have more money I could spend, have the nicest car on the road, and have a girlfriend my mates could never get. So that's what I reached, all three, and then realized that they were reasonably, I could probably up my game a bit. And so I remember asking the question, I was like, there must be more to life than this. And so I ended up deciding to go become a missionary. So I went and did a degree I did a degree in theology, and then I did a degree in divinity. So it was really interesting because I did it in Queen's. And try getting into Queen's when you don't have any qualifications. I literally got in on a sales pitch. I remember telling them, I said, "Look, I've got no qualifications. I don't have like A-levels or any of that sort of stuff." I said, "But I'm successful in business, and here's what I want to do next." And eventually they said, "Okay, we'll let you in on the diploma." And so got in on the diploma. And then I went back after starting for 1 week and said, "Hey, I'm Mark, I'm on the diploma, can you upgrade me onto the degree?" And they did. So it was all paper, there was no computers back then. And so ended up doing that. But when I did the divinity course in that, I wrote 3 main papers. One was focused on the environment, the other one was on animal rights, and the third one was what was called the gay issue. We would call it today, we would call it inclusion. But back then, that's what it was. So when I was writing papers like that, when you're in that type of environment, everybody thought I was a complete nutcase. So I ended up So I really ended up sort of standing up for peace, reconciliation, and what was right in Northern Ireland. So I started putting on major events in Belfast when I was in my early 20s, and I remember just getting into lots of trouble. So the papers were picking me up all the time, and it was sort of saying this politician saying this, and this one saying this, and this person from the Free Presbyterian Church doesn't like you, and what do you want to say back? And so I ended up just doing quite a lot on youth work and so on, until I got a phone call one day saying that the 27 churches of Northern Ireland have met to agree that you're not from God, and neither are your initiatives. So I did one thing well, I got them all in a room. So at that particular point, I was mad into water skiing, and I had an opportunity to go to Canada as a water ski instructor. So I basically got out of Northern Ireland because it didn't really want me, and so went over there, became a water ski instructor, had a blast, met some other guys, ultimately ended up setting up some businesses over there. This was after it had broken my dad's heart, telling him I wasn't going to take the family business on. And ultimately at that time, it was in the mid-late 90s. And so I set up a centre to help young people develop their ideas in Vancouver. And at that point, everybody's idea was it was basically internet. And so I was like early days in, and ended up working with all these young people, helping them to develop. It was a noble thing that I was doing with a mate with their own money. But ultimately, I accidentally set up Canada's first tech incubator or accelerator program. And then Silicon Valley guys found out about what I was doing. They flew up and they said, "We want you to do more of this and give me some money." It was one of the weirdest ones in my life, actually. These guys came from Silicon Valley, they'd made a ton of money, and basically they said, invested in me. They gave me the money and took no equity. It was crazy. Things like this just don't happen in life. And ended up getting to do that and expanded that throughout Canada. And then I had my own ideas and started spinning those out. And I set up a company called Band of Coders, and it grew that to about 150 staff, took no external capital, and then got bought. So made a bit of money, then started investing. Had the opportunity to, I did the seed round for Twilio, SendGrid, SoundCloud, and Uber. That multiplied that money a bit, and then had the opportunity to start another company. So I set one up called Service Cloud. That brought me to San Francisco. So moved after 13 years in Canada, and then moved to San Francisco. It was a cloud-based CRM system, and then got bought by Salesforce.com. And then set up another company called Trove. It was in the insurtech space. At that time, I was into ultra marathon running, and I was doing an Ironman and stuff at the time. Had a bad bicycle accident, and on that the insurance covered my clothes, it covered my health, but it didn't cover my bike, and my bike was worth 10 grand. And I remember thinking at that time, it was like, why not? I mean, what's wrong with this? They said, well, your bike's only covered or insured when it's in the house. And I said, well, that's bloody useless, So ended up starting a company to solve that problem, where you could insure things that were of value when they're on the move and so on. And that grew that company over a 9-year period, and then got acquired by Travelers Insurance, and then had my own idea again. So called Responsible, which roots back to the beginning of the story, when the stuff about environment is that my whole theology and belief in the world is really that we're put on this planet to look after it. And so I noticed that, or I read some articles that I couldn't put it down, was that the fashion industry is one of the biggest pollutants on the planet. That the 100 billion items are manufactured every year in the fashion industry. And if you think about it, there's only about 1.2 billion of us in the developed world. So that's for us. So that's 83 items a year or whatever it is, that we don't need that much, so between us. So I set up a company that would develop technology to make it easier for people to trade their items. So many women in the room, basically will use Vinted and things like that. I would say many guys in the room have traded their clothes too, right? So it's very rare. It doesn't happen very much. So I've developed technology to enable that, and specifically focused on males to begin with. And today we've now enabled Amazon to start in the resale market. They hadn't done that before, and so we're the first to enable Amazon to do that. And we work with eBay and lots of others. And so we're in the process of becoming one of the larger sneaker and streetwear trading companies now. So that's been 4.5 years. I'm at that, and love it.
It's not bad for a kid that was kicked out of school at 15.
It's really funny. I had this. I'll brag for a moment. I got for not. So all my mates who did go through all the traditional things and go through and do their masters and PhDs and whatever. And then a few years ago, I was given an honorary doctorate by Hillary Clinton at Queen's, and the guy stood up. The guy who runs the Seamus Heaney Foundation stood up at the beginning, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to soon-to-be Dr. Mark Dowds." And said, "What you need to know is this is not his first award." And I'm going like, "So where's this guy going?" And he said, "Mark won the most detentions in the history of his school," which is also true. I thought whenever my dad and mum were brought in, and the principal said, "Do you know that you have the most detentions in the history of the school?" And I was thinking, that makes me a legend because the school's 200 years old. But ultimately, it was really nice because what they said was, they said, "Mark basically got so many detentions for staring out the window, but what nobody asked is what did he see?" And so that was the nice turnaround on it.
Class. I love that. I love the journey you've been on from Silicon Valley to Canada, back to Belfast, and tomorrow you're about to embark on another massive journey. If you could maybe shed some light onto not what the journey is, but maybe your reason why, maybe your own personal purpose of why you're doing this.
Yeah, so I've been reasonably fit and healthy most of my life. I moved back to Ireland, I think it's roughly 9 years, and got myself embedded in the community again, opened Ormo Baths, or now Ormo Labs and stuff like that. So as a give back to the community. And so I've been really active in doing that locally. So I was just been going around my usual business, and then I got a phone call on January 3rd last year from a consultant basically saying, "Mark, I've got bad news for you. You have cancer." I was on the ski slopes at the time. My better half was off getting a lesson. I'd just sort of finished and sitting there having a beer. And he said, "Mark," he said, "we know how to treat these things." He said, "So don't let it ruin your holiday." I remember like hanging up the phone and sitting there staring at the wall. "Another beer, please." It shook me up. First thing I thought about were my kids, call them, and well, they're adults now, but just saying, "Hey, heads up." It scared the shit out of me, to be honest. It was I've never had anything health-wise in my entire life. So it was a wake-up call, and at that particular moment I realised that I was human. So the good news is it's all sorted, so we don't need to really belabor that piece. But probably the biggest piece was when I came back and I went and met with a doctor. They said, "Mark," it was here in my neck, is where they found the cancer, and they said, "Mark, how we're going to treat this is give you radiotherapy." And I said, "Well, what's the side effects?" And they said, "Well, you're going to have a dry mouth for the rest of your life." And I'm thinking, doesn't sound that bad. So that was it. That's what the doc said. So then I worked my angles, and I got myself. This is sort of typical me, is that called mates and different stuff, and I got myself connected to 3 other entrepreneurs around the world that had the same cancer and had radiotherapy, and interviewed them to say, "What's your life like now?" One of the guys said, "I waterboard myself every night to get rid of phlegm." He also slurred his words when he was speaking. One of the other guys had lost half of his teeth. They both said that they can't eat, and they can't do this. They can't dine with people anymore. So my entire life, is sitting with people, talking, doing this, and And so basically my public speaking part of my career had gone, all the socialization would be gone, all the rest of it. He also said, look, I haven't had a glass of wine in 3 years since it because I've got no taste buds. And I thought, well, that's cutting that off then. There's got to be a better solution. So ended up going back to the doctor and said, look, I'd rather die than have an extended half-life. The other thing they found out as well is that it did the stats, and the people who get this type of work on radiotherapy on their neck, there's a very high percentage of suicide on the other side because people just can't live with it. So I said to them, look, I don't think I could handle it. Did research, went for second opinions, got connected with friends in different parts of the world, and I got connected to a clinic in Germany. And these guys, the only place in the world that does targeted chemotherapy or isolated. So they basically put a catheter in your groin and they run basically this pipes up to your neck or wherever it is in your body. And at the same time they have this, they transfuse your blood. So when you go into this theater, it's like high tech. It's just like, Star Trek sort of stuff. And so as you give you the chemo, they then basically wash your blood through. So it basically washes out the toxins because the intensity of what they do is about 20 times the normal amount of chemo, so it would kill you. And so this is how they handle it. So I basically went to Germany. At that time, I'm CEO of a company, and I put one of the young guys on my team. I put him in as the managing director. That's because I thought, well, I could be either gone for good or gone for an extended period of time. And so let them run that. I then went to Germany. I had to pay for it myself, so I'm sort of fortunate that I had a bit of money to be able to do it. And I feel for the people who don't. It was really, that part is probably more emotional to me to go like, there are cancer treatments out there that you can get, but you've got to have money. I thought we can't just rely on the normal system. So that's something that basically has hit me pretty hard when I want to make a difference. I want to do something as an entrepreneur. I want to start giving back in some way. So believe it or not, I was able to go in there, do intensive therapy. I was 1 month out of the office and back, done and dusted, and I've been clear for now 14 or 15 months. So I'm just skint. So it's been one of those things, and so now I got myself involved with Cancer Fund for Children. There's another friend of mine, Roger. Some of you may know from Axial 3D, Roger Johnson. We're good mates, and conspired one day, and he said, Mark, you've always done absolutely mad stuff on a mountain bike or ultramarathoning or doing something. Why don't we pick up the baton from Rory Best because Rory Best a couple of years ago walked basically through to Kong where there's a new lodge and stuff. It was an inspiration to build a new lodge for Cancer Fund for Children. And he said, why don't we pick up the baton and do a big walk and throw a few mountains in. And so as a result of that, there's a book called The 26 High Points of Ireland. So basically there's 26 high points across all the counties in Ireland, and we're gonna do all of those starting tomorrow. And so I don't know what the hell. I think the last time I did an ultramarathon was 10 years ago, and I was about half the size I am right now. But we decided let's do that and raise £1 million. As of last night, we were 1,036,000 we've raised. So that's why I've had the privilege of getting a dinner with the Edge, which some of you in the room got to experience. And I had this fanboy moment last week when I get to interview the Edge. Everybody else got to listen and do whatever. I was sitting in the middle of it, going like, I'm sitting here on the stage interviewing the Edge. This is legendary, and I've got all the photos. And so one for a bucket list, and then we did the same with Foy Vance about a week or so before that. So Foy came over with his fiancée Bonnie Bishop, and they actually played a gig as well, which was amazing. But those two events raised 200 grand, thanks to a lot of people in this room as well. So it's been an absolutely amazing thing. So there were going to be 26 of us doing the 26 mountains, but there are 22 of us, I think it is now. We've had a couple of injuries and, folks training all the usual. And then we've got support from Kingsbridge and stuff. We've got Sir Suresh Murray and the guys are really there. It's become really competitive on the fundraising side. Like I put 50 grand in last night so that I would become number one on the whole list. And Suresh did, and then Suresh put I think another 20 grand in, the bastard, just so he could be number one. And so it's become really competitive. But the guys from Kingsbridge are supporting us a lot, and we've got. So physios and all that. So the whole team, there's about 40 of us that are traveling. It's an absolute logistical nightmare. It was last week we suddenly realized that the buses that we have won't go down all the roads. so we had to have one big bus and one small bus, and all this. But yeah, so we're nine consecutive days. The days will start at 6. We'll basically be on our feet at 6 a.m. and off the mountains anywhere between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. each day, and then we've got to get in the bus and go to the next location and to stay somewhere close to where we're going. So it's more or less 3 mountains a day, and so up and down in the bus on. So the local one here will be Sunday. We're starting in Donegal tomorrow. Then we're up on staying in the Burndale in Newcastle tomorrow night. We do Donard up and down, then we get in the bus and go down and do Sleaf Foy. So that's about an hour and a half in the bus, do that one up and down, and then some other mountain. I forgot all the names of them. And so I think the toughest part is going to be getting into a bus, sitting down, letting your legs seize up, and then getting back out again, and eating a sandwich on the go. So we're all decked out with all of our stuff. Everybody's got Crocs and everything, just because I've done a lot of ultra marathoning, and the number one thing, the hardest thing is going to be the feet and the knees. So it's the uphill's the slog, but the downhill's the pain. So I think that'll be the toughest bit of it. But there's a really good mix. Some of us, I probably recruited half the group, half to 2/3 of the group, and then they recruited others. So there's a bunch of folks that I've met that I didn't know before, and the banter's unbelievable. So we've been training all the time, and we're having such a laugh. So that part's going to be really good. The stories, though, of the people you don't know, and even the people I do know, is that one of the guys on the first day I was walking up with him, and I said, "So why are you doing it?" And he said, "Well, when my son was diagnosed with cancer in April last year, he was a rugby player, 17 years old," and he said, and he died at Christmas. And I'm like, this is Christmas past. Like this was in February. I go like I just remember starting to cry and looking at the guy. I going like, "How are you coping?" And he said, "I'm not." Mm-hmm. He said, "This is why I'm with you guys." He said, I need to be with people." There's Dennis, one of the guys, he's doing it. Dennis has just got diagnosed with Parkinson's, and his son's just gone through 3 years of cancer. He's 18 years old. You get into this stuff and you realize, oh my God, I'm a lightweight in this stuff. What these people have gone through or are going through, it's unbelievable. So I think for most of us, cancer has touched us somewhere. It hadn't for me until recently, and that's why I'm just throwing myself in to say, well, look, I've got a network of people, and some people have money, and I'm going to leverage it to try and help Cancer Fund for Children. This is an unbelievable charity. They're all Ireland. They've got, if you I can get you tours anytime you want, but they've got a lodge in Newcastle, Daisy Lodge. So they basically give respite for weekends for families. I mean, it's like a spa, and so the kids get cared for. They get to meet other kids and support and get all of that. So they get a weekend away from it all. There's no government support or anything. It's just all privately funded. And they're going to build another one of these in Cong, which is where we're going to finish on our last day in Mayo, and stay in Ashford Lodge. So we're going to suffer the last night.
I'm afraid of turning this on in case the static comes back again. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? I think, well, firstly, thank you on behalf of everyone because of the challenge you're doing. I actually went on last night to see where you were with the fundraising because the initial goal was 1 million. It's surpassed. But what, if you could maybe explain what this money will do and the impact that it's going to have on families and children across the island of Ireland?
Yeah, so at the moment, there's about 3 in 10 kids that basically get care from this particular charity that have it. So the whole focus is that of the fund is that basically that no child should go through cancer alone. And so so by building the second lodge, there's also all the home care and everything that goes with it. But by putting this is that basically every family and every kid that ever goes through cancer can get the care and the support. Because one of the things that I do know when you go through this is the emotion of my kids are in their 20s, but like what they had to go through emotionally. So if you can imagine what it's like if a parent finds the cancer in your small kids, like they haven't a clue what goes on, or if the kid has cancer and what the parents, I could only imagine. I mean, any in the room, like if you would to find out this was your child, I mean, it would destroy so the whole part of the emotional support and everything that's really what this is all for, is so that that basically that no one has to journey alone. So with the Daisy Lodge down in Cong, I think the whole entire structure is going to cost about 20 million, and a lot of it's been raised. Like Rory Best and lots of others have been very, very supportive of it, and to say this million that we have raised, we want to push it to about 1 million. I've got to, don't tell Suresh, but I have another 100 grand to go in this week, and so we'll probably try to push this to about 1.5 million, I think, and then continue to support in any way we can. But ultimately, that's what the charity stands for.
It's truly remarkable, and I kind of think right back to the event with The Edge, and you brought a kid that had been impacted and kind of told his story. Cody, was that his name? Is that right? Mm-hmm. And when you hear it from a kid's perspective, I actually refused to turn around at the table because I was facing the kid and my eyes were filling up. I think it's when you hear from a kid's mouth about his parent going through this and seeing it from their lens, it really hooked everyone in that day.
Yeah, there's a kid that lost their parent, and I mean, and told the story on stage. I mean, and like there wasn't a dry eye in the place. There's 2 of the ladies that were sitting at my table. Literally, it's finished, and they basically up to the stage just to hug him. So yes, like that, and the CEO, Phil, was on the stage. That he interviewed this young man that night, and you got to see the spirit of him as well. He's just a real pastoral, caring, but he's a brilliant CEO. Like he knows. So I'm doing regular breakfast with him because he wants to now. He said to me, he said, Mark, he said, I've got a lot of money to continuously raise for this. He said, how can I do it differently? And so what I'm meeting with them, and maybe some of you who have got bright minds in the room have great ideas on this, but it's almost like how does he set up some sort of foundation or support or entrepreneurial piece that money can continuously flow in, that he's not just going to have to raise all the time. Because I mean, I do that for businesses and stuff, and it is a thankless job. But Phil is an amazing guy, and it's partially why this is the charity of choice, because I'm not one just to give the charity, because a lot of the money doesn't go to to the people that need it, but this charity is very different.
We had a great conversation that day about the characters going on the trip with you tomorrow, and the need for people that maybe aren't necessarily fit, but when they're going through tough times, their morale, their attitude, and we kind of refer to the need for that in our life, just good, positive thinking people that are going to laugh when we shouldn't be laughing and really pick the spirits up. I suppose give us a breakdown of who's going to be on the bus, but the type of characters that are going to be on the bus and the role they all have to play.
Yeah, so I'll go. I'll mention Suresh. Obviously you know Suresh very well, but I've known Suresh and I we were both finalists on Entrepreneur of the Year many years ago, and so that's how we know each other through that. But I put it in the Entrepreneur of the Year. We have a WhatsApp group with about 400 people. It's the best WhatsApp group ever known to mankind, because if it's like, does anybody know? It's one of those who gets DM me like about 2 seconds later. So it's access to anybody. But I remember I put it into the group, and Suresh came back and he just said, Mark, I'd love to do this, but I'm not fit. And I'm not ready for to do it, and so on. And I said, well, look, I'll be your accountability partner. Let's get on with it. And Suresh has lost over 2 stone. I mean, what I didn't ask him was, have you ever climbed a mountain before? So we were literally, I think it was like in January. We went out. It was freezing day in the wet, and Suresh comes out with all the gear on, and so the two of us are just plodding up, and then I eventually found out that he had never had a pair of hiking boots on in his life, never been on a mountain. And I go, oh my God, so this is a bit different. He then personally hired the guides that are taking us. We have 4 guides that are taking us, but he hired 2 of them to personally train him and take up mountains and do it. So he's probably going to brush up them. I mentioned Dennis, who Dennis has recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's, unfortunately, but he also is a doctor's work found out on this. He's 65 years old, and he's the current ultra marathon orienteering champion of Ireland. And I go, you bastard, because I watched the first time I watched him, he just gracefully hops up the mountain. I go like, oh, I'm thinking, all right, I'm only 55. I'm going, he's got 10 years on me, and he's just gracefully bouncing up. I've got my better half. She's a fitness trainer on doing this, but she's never done anything like that. In fact, whenever we first met, she said, I said about going to hike for a mountain. She said, you need to get. She said, you got the wrong bird for that, So, but now she's got the boots on and doing this stuff. We've got Wayne Pollock. Wayne runs a luxury travel business. I'd never met Wayne before this trip. He found out about it through the fund. And larger than life character, my God, he's loud. Initially, when I first met him, I'm thinking, this is going to be disastrous, because you got somebody like this is going to grate on everybody, but he is the most thoughtful, graceful man, and just belly laughing. So I can go on. There's a load of characters in it, and you've got business leaders, sports people, right across. So it's just a wonderful bunch of humans. But there's enough of us in there who are reasonably inappropriate and will say anything. It was I'll tell you, I might as well tell you this one. So we'll have a laugh. So we're huffing and puffing up the mountain, and I had just got back from doing a Wim Hof retreat. If you know what that is, so basically breathing, learning to breathe, exercises, and then I got a book, and all of this was learning how to breathe through your nose. So the more you breathe through your nose, the more oxygenated your body gets, and whatever. And this was going through my head as I'm hearing everybody huffing and puffing. But one of the things it says in the book is that you learn to breathe through your nose more effectively, you get better hard-ons. And so I tell this to the group on the way up, and they're pissing themselves laughing. And so before we know it, there's all these memes going around in the WhatsApp group with everybody with big nostrils, and and Suresh says, he says to everybody, anybody wants, basically nasal enhancement, DM me, So it's all that sort of stuff, It's so we're gonna have a good time.
I don't even know how to respond to that, Mark. Oh, fantastic. I think what really comes across, the golden thread between the 3 conversations this morning, is what humans are capable of when they come together for a common good and with a common purpose. And I suppose it's the opening up the question that how can the people in this room support you and the journey you're about to embark on?
I brought a few posters, and depending on what your work is or what you can do, love to get your support through that. Things that people have done, Boojum, they're basically have set it up now from this week where anybody shopping in Boojum, they'll ask you, do you want to put 50p onto this? There's a few people are doing things like that. We've got I'm the chairman of another organisation called Mantis, which is an organisation about saving lives on the roads for truck safety. And they're bastards because they've decided to do an entire thing with their team and partners and to do it and to go hike Donard and do a whole fundraise as a company just for one mountain. But they did it for when I'm finished, and I have to do it with them. So we finish on the 15th, get home the 16th, and I've got to go do Donard again the 20th. Tell what you're doing.
Well, yeah, I think, like we spoke about this, I think it's very easy as a business owner to say, I'm too busy. You know, and I know how busy you are with all, you know, your different businesses and you're on the board. And when we had breakfast, Mark kind of spoke of the logistical planning of taking 20 people in minibuses across 26 peaks across 10 different days. And you almost not feel guilty, but I suppose it makes you reflect to say, well, what's my role in this? And myself and Jared, we're neighbours, and last year we walked from Lisburn to Carlingford, not to raise money, but to raise awareness for men's mental health and the impact that the two guys just getting out for a walk can have on stress levels. And I phoned Jared. I'll let you tell the message you got on a voice note.
This is Mark earlier. Kieran, he pulls no punches, we all know this, so I got a voice note from him saying, Jared, you're going to tell me to F off, but hear me out. And I knew whatever was going on that I was in anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we spoke about it and it's being done.
Yeah, so next Monday on the 16th of June, while Mark and the team are I don't even know where you'll be by then.
We'll be on the bus home.
Right, okay.
We come home on the afternoon, get on the buses in the afternoon of the 16th. So so the entire hike is 9 days in totality, and then we get to stay over and then come home. So while we're on the bus back, you'll be on your feet.
We'll be on our feet. Myself and Jared set off about 4:30 in the morning. Monday the 16th, we're going to walk from Lisburn to Newcastle. When we walked to Carlingford last year with a pint of Guinness or 3 at the end, this time we're walking up and down Donard once we arrive in Newcastle. So it's just shy of 50 kilometres, and then obviously Northern Ireland's highest mountain after. Just to, I suppose, do our bit and play our role with this story, and to take our part. But what we would like to do is, although we're walking for safety purposes together, because a lot of it's single file with high vises on, you know, it's dark for parts of it. We're opening up the hike for anyone that would like to join us. We're probably going to get into Newcastle Donard Car Park about 5 p.m. on a Monday, which doesn't suit a lot of people. But if there's anyone working from home or would like to join us for the hike, and perhaps, you know, assist with fundraising for that, would love for you to join us, because I think our morale will probably be taking a beating by then. All we did was laugh the last time, to be fair. I think that was the only way. You have to smile in the face of adversity on many occasions with this.
Yeah, I'll send you a WhatsApp group that we've got that you can follow us if you want as well. Yeah. But it was only, as I say, it was September that Roger and I sat down and we said, well, look, Rory Best's reasonably famous and he went out and raised over $1 million and doing stuff. Imagine if we could go out and do something. So we're unknown. Yeah. So as the rest of you, you know, it's not, I mean, it's hard work, but you could raise £1 million for the charity if you wanted, you know. It's just putting your back behind it, and say, you talked about business, and we did this on chatting on this on our breakfast, but if you want to get something done, ask the busiest person in the room, you know, and people like you. So folks you could inspire others. So inspire your friends or folks at work, and would love you to get behind it in some way. If you want to do something bigger, we'll get you the support that you need as well. We just appreciate your support.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please get a very warm round of applause.